a slight reduction in the interest rate can mean all the difference in terms of the profitability of the project. And anybody who has a 30-year mortgage knows what I'm talking about. The first year when you're making your mortgage payment, okay, here goes my $2,000 mortgage payment, and then you see next month's thing, you paid $300 in principal. You say, what in the world happened here? Because the mortgage is so long. If it were just a one-year mortgage, obviously you'd be paying far less in interest. So the longer term the investment that a businessman is engaged in is, the more interest rate sensitive it is. So when interest rates go lower, it's these longer term things that are far, far removed from finished consumer goods, like mining, manufacturing, capital goods, long-term projects that are given a stimulus. Well, so here we see the coordinating function. At the very time that consumers are saying, I'm going to consume a portion of my income in the future, that's also the time that business firms are producing for the future. So there's a time coordination mechanism. But secondly, remember my point about how if I earn $100 and I spend only $60 and I put the other $40 in the bank, I have in effect released $40 worth of resources that I'm not going to consume right now. Well, these saved resources in the economy that are not immediately consumed provide the material wherewithal to see all these new investment projects through to completion. So again, this is a very smooth process. Now, let's consider the second way interest rates can come down, and that's when the central bank established by the government, in our case the Federal Reserve System, forces them down artificially. Now, for time purposes, I'm not going to go into open market operations and things of that nature. That's in not only my book, but many other books. For our purposes, all we need to know is that the Federal Reserve has the power to influence interest rates downward or upward. So let's suppose the Federal Reserve System decides, let's create prosperity. So let's force interest rates down. Well, here you have in the short run the same consequences. You have low interest rates. You have businesses beginning long-term projects. You have apparent prosperity. But while interest rates that come down because of voluntary saving lead to genuine economic growth, interest rates that are pushed down artificially by a government-created central bank create boom and bust. Because notice how both of our examples of coordination are now interfered with. In the first case, we were talking about how one coordinating function is that I'm going to consume in the future. So businesses prepare for that in the future. But in our example with the central bank, just because the central bank forces interest rates down, that doesn't mean the public is going to defer their consumption to the future. The public may even be consuming more in the future. So now we have businesses engaging in long-term production projects at a time when people's consumption desires are to consume right now. So there's a mismatch. There's a time mismatch. So at the very time that people are demanding more of existing products now, businesses are misled into thinking now's a good time to engage in long-term product development of new products. Well, that's a market mismatch. That can't be sustained. It's going to be a bust. Secondly, just because Ben Bernanke or Alan Greenspan says, you know what, let's force interest rates down to 1%. Let's just get it way, way down there. Well, that doesn't release any saved resources into the economy. In our first example, people genuinely abstained from consumption, thereby releasing resources for use by investors. They haven't in the second case. But yet, meanwhile, investors are being encouraged to engage in long-term projects for which the necessary saved resources do not exist. So now all these new projects are going to try to draw from an unchanged pool of savings. They can't all work. There aren't enough saved resources there. Now, what I've said to you here, this should just be common sense. Just because a central bank chairman pushes an interest rate down, that doesn't release the factors of production necessary to see additional investment through to completion. So investors will start engaging in their project, and they're going to find that since they're now all competing for the same unchanged pool of resources, their costs are going to be much higher than they thought, because they're going to be bidding for an unchanged pool of resources with a lot of other investors. So now they're going to need more. They need to borrow more to meet these higher costs. But now interest rates are going to head back up unless the central bank just keeps pushing them down. Now, a great analogy that Ludwig von Mises, the great Austrian economist of the 20th century, gives us is he says, think of the economy as being like a master builder building a house, but who falsely believes he has 20% more bricks than he really has. Now, let's assume for the sake of argument he can't buy any more bricks. Let's just say that he believes that the resource base at his disposal is 20% larger than it really is. Well, what type of house is he going to build? He's going to put down, for instance, foundations that are much broader than he otherwise would. He might even build a house in a slightly different style than he otherwise would. Now, is it better for the master builder to discover his error in the short run or when he's putting the last brick on the structure? Well, of course, the sooner he finds out that he has a false estimate of his brick supply, the better. Obviously, if he puts the very last brick on and then turns his head and says, I still have half a story to go, there's no roof and everything's all disaster, that's terrible. Now that's all squandered. He's going to have to tear it all down. He's squandered all that labor time. All those resources are permanently squandered. Society is all the poorer for this. Whereas if he had discovered his error after laying the second row of bricks, well, too bad for him, but at least it's manageable, the error. Well, the reason this analogy is so useful is that we compare it to the economy as a whole. And so when the central bank artificially brings interest rates down, investors now begin on investment trajectories which, like the house in the master builder example, cannot all be completed with the existing resources. So is it better that they discover this error in the short run or in the long run? Well, we are being told every time we hear by the central bank that the solution to our dilemma caused by artificially low interest rates is even lower interest rates. We need interest rates down to zero. In fact, there are some people who are actually saying zero is too high. I'm not joking about that. Zero is too high for interest rates. So in other words, more of what caused the problem is somehow going to be the solution. Well, every time we're told that, that is exactly analogous to saying to our master builder, or figuring out what is the solution to his dilemma, and concluding that what we really should do is just liquor him up so he doesn't notice the brick supply going down. Just liquor him up so he's just laying the bricks, not thinking about tomorrow. So yeah, you can keep the apparent prosperity going. Sure, he's still employing people. He's still engaged in the building process. Wonderful, great. But that doesn't make the unsustainability of what he's doing go away. And likewise, just pouring more money, more of the medium of exchange into the economy, cannot correct the structural problems that the initial artificial lowering of interest rates caused. So, this is called the Austrian theory of the business cycle, because it's been put forth by the so-called Austrian School of Economics. The Austrian School of Economic Thought is so called because many of its early practitioners happen to be from Austria. Menger, Bambaver, Hayek, Mises, etc. Although I say there are far, far more Austrian school economists in the United States today than there are in Austria. Now, there's nothing easier on earth today than to make fun of the Austrian School of Economics, although no one's particularly good at it, I find, but they just do it. They say, oh, nobody believes that, nobody follows these people. Yeah, because that's what we need right now, a popularity contest, sure. Because we all know the mainstream of economics has done just a bang-up job for us. We can't possibly look at competing traditions of thought. No, that's just out of the question. Now, notice that we have just lived through an excellent example of what I've just described, namely the case of what do we do about the master builder running out of bricks? Instead of telling him he's running out of bricks, liquor him up and keep him going. That's exactly what Alan Greenspan did when we had the bust following the dot-com boom. There was another Fed-fueled mania where people are investing insane sums in companies that have no profits, no customers, nobody knows what the heck they do. And, oh, no, I'm going to get rich this way. I mean, every time there is a Fed-fueled boom, everybody on earth thinks, I can make $1 million in the stock market. Everybody immediately thinks there are get-rich-quick schemes. I can flip houses, I can get rich in the stock market. And so, you watch that John Beck free and clear home system at 3:30 in the morning. I can show you how to buy a house for $200. Those people have nothing on what the Federal Reserve pulls on people, making them think they can get rich quick with various schemes like this. But anyway, so here we've gone through the dot-com boom and bust. So the bust comes, and Greenspan by 2001 thinks, you know what, I'm sick of this whole bust thing. Let's have a boom, man, time for a boom. So what do? Well, all I can do as the Fed chairman, practically, is lower interest rates. So, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So let's lower those interest rates back down.